Urban explorers of Reddit, what is your creepiest, most horrifying experience? Part 1. Please like and subscribe to support this channel. My friends and I used to explore this old factory processing plant. No idea what it was originally, anyway. It had lots of underground sections which were pitch black even a couple of meters from the entrance, but which also required going down a flight of stairs. One time we found a burned out car 2 to 3 levels down. No idea how it got in there, but that was kinda creepy. Another time we found a hole. We didn't bring torches, flashlights, with us because we're idiots, but we had lighters and were trying to figure out what the hole was or if it could lead anywhere. We put a stick in there and it ended up being at least 6 feet deep, but we also learned that it was full of some liquid and if we had fallen in could have easily drowned in the dark. Another time we went a couple of levels down and one of us at the bottom started screaming shrieks of absolute terror and the rest of us thought we were all going to be murdered. We all started running. Everyone was screaming at this point. There was this sludgy shit on the ground and some of us slipped and fell just like in a goddamn horror movie. Slipping and sliding, our limbs out of control. Again, there's 6+ people screaming bloody fucking murder with absolute fear and terror on their faces, so we all thought we were going to get murdered. Turned out a bird had made a nest down there and my sister got spooked and my friend screamed like a bitch. Rural area, landscape photography. Happen upon a long abandoned house and set up to snap a few images. Look in window. It is perfectly furnished. Piano, with music open. Fishing gear. Wood stove with firewood nearby. Magazines on coffee table. Jackets on coat rack. Roll top desk, open with neatly stacked papers. Family photos. Small kitchen table with red top and matching chairs, and one is pulled out. It was all covered in inches of dust. It looked like someone walked out in 1950 and never returned. I drove a friend who was doing genealogy research on his family tree to an old cemetery that had individual family mausoleums, granite, with bronze doors and stained glass windows, for those who could afford them, back in the day. It had been decades since his family mausoleum door had been unlocked and opened, so the caretaker had a hard time with the skeleton key trying to make the lock work. Finally, once we got inside, we discovered that a window on the back side, along the cemetery property line, back to back with a garage, so you couldn't easily see it, had been broken and vandals had entered through the rear. Sadly, they had pried open the sealed lids on several marble vaults and removed some of the remains, along with rings that had been entombed with the bodies at the time. This happened 8 years ago when I was a sophomore in high school. My urbex friends and I were on a bike ride looking for cool places to explore in a relatively dilapidated area when we discovered a really creepy cave, an old abandoned cement mine we later learned. We did some mild exploring that first day but quickly realized it would require more gear to thoroughly explore, flashlights, respirators, etc. About a week later 5 of us came back with the proper gear and a camera to see what we could find in the mine. We discovered there was basically one main shaft that sloped downward and deeper into the earth, so we followed that main route. It was wide enough for a car to drive down and was pretty well graded, so the walking was easy. There were many rooms, old machinery, and rusting equipment off of this main shaft, but we mostly avoided it in the beginning. We were trying not to get lost or confused. Along the way the walls were littered with the classic abandoned graffiti. X was here, swastikas, initials and dates, phallic drawings, etc. As we got deeper and deeper, though, the graffiti really thinned out. At this point the light from the entrance was long gone and we were relying solely on flashlights. The air was so stagnant and hazy with particles that the light from our flimsy flashlights would only go 20 feet or so before getting totally obscured by dust. Thank goodness for the respirators. The glow sticks we had brought to mark our way to prevent getting lost were also basically useless because they would disappear in the haze only a few steps after dropping them, and we had only brought 10 or so. At this point we started arguing among ourselves. Several of the crew was nervous about going any deeper with the air quality being so terrible and without a good way to prevent us from getting lost. We were probably a quarter mile into the earth now. The rest of us managed to override that sentiment of fear by assuring them that the path was easy and straightforward, so we'd have to try to get lost. We were going to rely on our level-headedness, sense of direction, and flashlight battery life to get out. Despite the agreement to push on, it was becoming very creepy for everyone. We walked for a while in silence, hearing nothing but our own movements and the steady drip of water coming from somewhere deep in the cave. I think we were all pretty scared at this point but no longer willing to admit it to each other. Then we stumbled across something that all made us stop cold. Dug into the side of the deep stone shaft we were slowly descending was a tunnel, an offshoot. It was narrow, you'd have to crouch to go through it, and it was also a good few feet off the ground so it required a scramble to reach it. But that wasn't what made us stop. It was the graffiti. We hadn't seen any for 10 minutes or so and had assumed the artists never came this deep. But someone else clearly had, and the message they left was ominous. The tunnel was lined with words written in white, all of them somehow relating to death and destruction. Scrawled throughout the tunnel were words like suffering, pain, plague, disease, and hell. It was pretty terrifying. Who else would come this far just to write such a terrible message in a mysterious tunnel that broke from the main path? But there was no turning back now, we had to see where the tunnel led to. Despite our fear, we were overpowered by intense curiosity. So one by one we crawled through the tunnel to the other side. What we found was a strange flooded chamber. Around the pool of water were many large stones, each covered with dozens of burned-out tea candles. There must have been hundreds of used tea candles in the place. The walls had a few creepy monster faces poorly graffitied on them, and the tunnel entrance back to the main shaft was ringed with a spray-painted blood-stained mouth. What was this place? Some weird ritual site for local Satan worshippers? An elaborate hoax set up by a bunch of kids? We couldn't find much evidence to figure it all out, and we were running out of adrenaline to keep exploring. We all crawled out of that weird hell hole and back into the main shaft where we promptly headed towards the exit. When we finally saw that pinprick of natural life coming from the real world outside, we were flooded with relief. We never did figure out what that mysterious cavern was for, and I think I'm content to leave it a mystery. No, we didn't hear any monsters in the depths of the tunnel or find any bloody Satan praisers themselves, but just finding that room, buried deep in an old forgotten mine, was enough to creep all of us out for a long time. Here's some photo evidence of the adventure. I had one creepy experience I already told, but my friends who always go exploring told me about this time. They were just following a trail that went into the hills, and after almost reaching the freeway, they ended up near an old closed-up train tunnel. They were able to squeeze through some loose fencing, and after wandering through with nothing of interest, they eventually came to a bunch of shipping containers. They told me that when they glanced inside, they saw a ton of guns and ammo in one and just a shit ton of heavy boxes in the rest. After a few minutes of checking it out, they heard voices from further down the tunnel coming closer, so they got out of there. They also said it almost smelled like the ocean towards the end, so the tunnel might have led out near the beach. Last winter I went into this abandoned parking lot under a closed shopping mall. It had 2 levels. The upper level had a bit of sunlight going in through the windows, but the lower level was pitch black. I made my way down this wide ramp that the cars would use, and I decided to have a look at the bottom level. After turning my flashlight on, I noticed that the space was huge, much bigger than the upper level. I remember how the light danced through the many supporting pillars and casted vivid shadows. I said, "Hello, and I'm just taking a look around," just to make my intentions clear, but was met with no response. So I decided to walk around for a bit, but couldn't see anything of interest, just a lot of junk, some empty old bottles, but nothing that might indicate someone living or hanging around there. The place seemed completely abandoned. However, this uneasy feeling that someone might be hiding in the pitch black shadow of one of those pillars took the better of me, and I climbed back up the ramp. I left taking different route and passed under an overhead clearing that snow had fallen through. Just as I was about to hop the fence and leave, I noticed that the patch of snow that had formed had footprints in it. I know this doesn't really sound horrifying when you read it, as the logical explanation was that some poor chap had probably taken shelter from the cold inside the lot. But still, being there creeped the hell out of me. I've got a few. Asterisk scary but not creepy scary. Asterisk we were exploring an old power plant. I was going into the control room while my friend continued down the hall. Suddenly a part of the building collapsed. I immediately assumed something happened to my friend. Man, was I glad when I saw he was unharmed. The collapsed part while exploring an abandoned steel factory. We went around the corner into the next hallway when we came face to face with what appeared to be a security guard. Creep at first. My heart dropped until I saw it was only a dummy. The dummy. I was exploring a certain abandoned mill near a large city on the coast with a friend. We snuck in, messed around a bit, and realized that we only had one flashlight. Took turns, weird noises, dark inside because there's no power, evidence of homeless occupation and empty needles. Real horror game material. We come up stairway and turn a corner ahead is a walkway bridge, aka the way to the rest of the building. To the right is a pitch black room that doesn't feel very nice. As we walk towards the bridge, the flashlight picks out a sign that says to hell and points towards this dark room. We didn't go in, didn't feel right. Went to an abandoned hospital. There was a large square staircase spiraling up to the roof on the outside of the building, locked steel door at the bottom, so the only way up was to climb on the outside up to the first landing. My buddy boosts me up, I climb over, and there's a sleeping bag with a steak knife next to it on the landing. I call down, we're definitely not alone here, dude. No, but it's cool, says a voice behind me, scaring the shit out of me and causing me to jump and whirl around. There's a young dirty homeless looking guy standing there, coming down the stairs from above, hands up palms out. Didn't mean to scare you. He takes a seat on the stairs, so I carefully step on the handle of the steak knife, lean over the edge, and pull my friend up. We had planned to sit on the roof and drink beer, so we offer homeless guy a beer, which he gratefully accepts, and we shoot the shit on the landing for a while. We're talking about the city, the cops, traveling, life in general. He's basically a drifter, been in town for a week or so, but a nice guy. Things are going pretty well when he asks, "You guys are human, right?" I fucking hate it when I meet people that end up being aliens, and you never know until you peel their skin off. They've been after me a long time, you know, they don't stop, they never stop. Sometimes I think I should just kill everyone to be safe. He's definitely not joking, and there's an uncomfortable silence as my friend and I realize this guy is fucking crazy. "Yeah man," I say, "we're human, we just wanted to check out the place and drink some beer. We're gonna go ahead and move on now, we definitely don't want any trouble." He just stares in silence, so we leave him the last beer, carefully back up to the railing, jump down and walk away very quickly, constantly looking back over our shoulders. The entire time, he's just standing there, still and silent, watching us leave. That place is still abandoned, 5 years later, and we've never been back. I'm not a believer in the supernatural, but humans can be deceptive and dangerous in ways you can't see coming. My wife and I and a friend of ours were exploring an abandoned state-run school for troubled youth with a very nasty history that includes the torture and death of some of the students. Behind the campus through some woods was a gravesite with a couple dozen, simple crosses, to mark the graves. My wife and I were working on photographing the crosses and our friend was wandering around the gravesite probably 50 feet away from us. He hurries over to us with eyes as big as saucers and tells us he saw someone in the woods watching us. Considering how we were not in our hometown, trespassing, and near a county jail, we packed our gear up quickly and started heading back the way we came. We would stop every so often in the woods between the gravesite and the school to watch and listen. I never saw the person that was supposedly watching us, but I did hear someone else walking through the woods after us. Edit. Remembered another time we were exploring an abandoned warehouse. We just got in and were walking around the large storage facility in the back when we heard what sounded like a can getting knocked over coming from the offices in the front of the building. We decided to check out the noise before we got into exploring the place and photographing it. All three of us sneak up to the front of the building. I take lead and start navigating the hallways as quietly as possible looking for the source of the noise. I look into one of the offices expecting to find a cat or some other sort of stray, wild animal, only to find a person kneeling in a corner of the room, facing the corner, and rocking forwards and backwards. I turned back to the group, gave the signal to get the hell out, and we ran for it. Went to a closed-up mental hospital in my city with some friends at night. Everything was cool until we got to the basement, where there were 5-meter wide and 4-meter high lit tunnels going far to both directions. We headed down one end and found a huge active generator, then we went the other way, and as we were about to hit another intersection, we saw 2 men wearing full green attire and face masks walking at the end of one of the corridors at 2 a.m. We got out of there real quick. We were kids exploring an underground flood channel. There were spots we could climb up and dangle our arms out of the storm drains on the street, but that required crawling up weird diagonal tunnels. There was 4 of us, maybe 12 years old. 1 flashlight. The walls were all graffitied with a lot of gang stuff, and even warnings to turn back. Blah blah blah. We just took it as other kids that were bored. We got to the spot where the ceiling angled down quite low to the point the opening was so small we had to crawl to continue. Challenge accepted. it looked like it opened up again shortly. So we crawled through 5 to 6 feet of the low area, and when it opened back up, it looked like we were in a large round concrete pipe, before it was square or rectangular. Still lots of graffiti. We started yelling and playing with the echoes, then we thought we heard something, so we got quiet. Then a real loud, "You are going to fucking die," came echoing from the darkness. The kid with the flashlight ran so fast and the rest of us were left in absolute darkness. Anyways, this was the first time we went past the low spot, but the last time we went down there. None of us died that day, the rest of us ended up quietly and slowly walking out in the darkness. When I was in college, a few friends and I went to this local abandoned hotel. It was a swanky place back in like the 50s, but had just been sitting around abandoned and fenced off ever since. We walked by and saw an open window on a second-story ledge and ended up finding an old wooden ladder nearby on the property. We went in and hung around and saw a bit of great graffiti. The whole place was trashed with actual garbage as well as bits of the building that were falling apart. We made it up the staircase to the 3rd floor, looking in each of the rooms. The area we were in used to be the housing for the staff of the hotel. The 3rd floor was covered in garbage from throughout the years. We got to the last room on the 3rd floor and looked in to find a lit candle with no one else around. Realizing we were not alone, we booked it out of there, and once we were outside, looked up to see someone watching us from one of the windows. Now we went to college in a city with a significant homeless problem and assumed we had just stumbled onto someone's home, but still shit freaked us out. They cemented up the place after another explorer fell down an open elevator shaft and broke his legs, and it has recently been renovated and they are turning it into an apartment building. Not the creepiest find, but definitely freaked us out in the moment. TLDR. Searching an abandoned hotel, we found a lit candle that wasn't ours and secretly watched by squatter on the way out. Exploring an abandoned construction site. It's a site out in redneck country that's got a bunch of old construction vehicles getting overgrown with plants and my GF, and I decided to go check it out, see what it's all about. We look around and don't see a whole lot. It's about to rain, so we decide to head out. As we are getting in my car, my GF freezes and says, "There's a guy in the woods watching us." I shit myself and ask if she's sure. She repeats herself and says he saw her see him and laid flat on the ground to hide himself. No, pet out of there real fucking quick. A group of my friends and I explored an abandoned asylum, mental hospital a couple years ago in the OKC metro, very unsafe at night for silly college freshmen like ourselves. The first experience we had was all of us taking our merry time enjoying the darkness and generally fucking around. You have to come in through a broken window, and we were all gathered at the window just being dumb when we hear loud, echoing footsteps down the hall running towards us. We all did that, "Who the heck is in here? Who's messing with us?" Look and turn in, after realizing we're all present and none of us are sprinting down a dark abandoned hallways, booted out of there. The second time, we could hear a group of people messing with us, jumping from around corners and such, but they never got too close. We assumed it was an animal at first, but got brave, and realized it was a person. We managed to catch them and, after staring at a collection of seemingly drugged up 20-somethings, who begged us for cans of paint and cigarettes, we got the not-so-good vibes, finally, you say, and tried to leave. The leader of the haunted asylum cronies asked if we had jewelry, which we denied. He then said the creepiest thing I've heard in my life. "I like jewelry. I take it off the girls here when they sleep." We fucking bolted. There was an abandoned hotel I was checking out, gained access through a blown-out window near the indoor pool. Smells like death inside. Come to find a couple of bloated dead deer in the slime collected towards the deep end of the pool. That should have been my sign to go. I make my way into the lobby and banquet areas, come across a couple of raccoons and squirrels who scurry away swiftly. Everything is destroyed, even the reception desk has been ripped in half. Nothing interesting to photograph, just trash. Neat little piles of trash. After a bit of searching I find the stairwell. There's an odd noise coming from above that I brush off as rain. I decide to skip a couple floors because they're probably in the same condition as the lobby, and a lot of the exterior windows had been blown out. I get to 4 and open the door, not worried about noise as I'm confident that I'm the only sober person on premise of not the only person. As I pull the door open, the rain noise suddenly ceases, completely. I point my flashlight down the hallway and see hundreds of geese poke their heads out of the guest rooms. I remember the moment where nothing moved and we just stared at each other as lasting several minutes, though I'm sure it was about 10 seconds. Here I am, in the middle of the hall, geese of abandoned luxury staring me down. Once the initial shock of the sight wears off, I remember I'm only looking at half of the floor. Behind me the geese aren't pulling a deer in the headlights, they're coming towards me. Time to go. I close the stairwell door behind me, only muffling the cacophony that erupted once I moved. As I hustle down the stairs I realize the signs were there, goose shit everywhere. I hit the lobby and turn towards the pool where a group of geese has collected as if they were trying to trap me. Luckily, they're just dumb birds. I got out to find the exterior of the hotel swarming with the fuckers. There was one lone sentinel standing on the roof, honking out a shrill command that the perimeter had been breached. I should have stayed to get more pictures, but I was done, covered in filth from a slip down the stairs, and didn't feel like collecting fresh shit from the dive bombers circling overhead. I did get this though.